You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you after an important weekend for the Atlanta Braves that ended in walk-off fashion the way that they needed it to, quite frankly, as they take 2 out of 3 from the Toronto Blue Jays, continue their winning ways on this homestand. But as we'll talk about, each one of these days, each one of these wins becoming more and more important as the days in the regular season tick down and the wild card race continues to, I won't just say heat up. I think this thing has reached maybe not a boiling point yet, but over the next 3 weeks, it definitely could. We'll talk all about that and some of the things that we saw over the weekend and, of course, on Sunday as the Braves walked off with a 4-3 win over the Blue Jays. Before we get started with that, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast, quite obviously. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Jake, we've talked about how important these games are for the Braves. As must-win games go, if the day ends in Y these days, then it's probably a game that the Braves pretty much need to win. I would say Sundays was one that they are very happy to have outlasted the Blue Jays club. That could have certainly spoiled not just the series, but the homestand, and quite possibly some bigger goals for the Braves had they been able to take 2 out of 3.
And we talked about it coming into last week, the stretch that you had coming up against teams below 500. You really had to take advantage of that, while you would have, liked to see a sweep in one of these series. At the very least, you had to win both of them. And so to be able to come back and get that win on Sunday after losing that one late, showed a lot of good fight by this Braves team. And like you said, a win that they had to have to win that series.
Yeah, I mean, everything has kind of become that must win. And it was a crazy thing to be saying in late July and, early to middle of August, even late August at some point. But, when it comes down to a race, not, necessarily in the traditional pennant race sense, but where your berth in the postseason is on the line each and every day, you've got to figure out ways to win these games. The Braves were able to do that on this one, and it wasn't always pretty. I mean, as far as wins go, Jake, you'll take them in any way, shape, or form you can get them. Obviously, the Braves have had some costly ones this year. They've had to deal with a lot of other injuries and setbacks and things that have gone on over the course of the year. But this was just one of those that it didn't always feel like the home team was going to come out on top, but eventually they were able to find a way to get it done. And I think that speaks as much to anything to where this Braves club is at this point. It really doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter who does it. It just matters that it gets done.
It does. And look, I think you can probably bring out one of your old sayings. We haven't said a lot this year, but this was an ugly win for the Atlanta Braves. But yeah, it is a win, and you would much rather have that than anything else. So it wasn't pretty overall on the weekend at times for the Braves. Certainly not offensively, but that pitching staff, at least on Friday and Sunday, continues to carry this team. And we've talked about it a lot. That is the formula for this Braves team right now. It is great pitching, getting good defense, which honestly the defense kind of let them down at times this weekend as well. The Braves still able to come out of it with a series victory. So look, it's not going to be pretty. This offense it is what it is at this point. It is decimated by injuries. You are playing a bunch of backups. You're playing backups at this point right now. It is not going to be pretty offensively. You're going to have to hope that you can scratch enough across and that this pitching staff can remain as dominant as it has been for much of the season.
Yeah, by the time you have ended up playing outfielders in the infield on purpose, you have reached a point where you're just doing everything that you can to just keep this thing going. And that's really where the Braves found themselves, obviously, with the injury to Whit Merrifield, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. That has put the Braves in an incredibly, incredibly thin place as far as their depth is concerned in the infield. And they're going to manage that, as they have many injuries this year, by not putting the player on the injured list immediately and shutting him down for a number of weeks in the hope that maybe they'll have Whit Merrifield back sooner or later. But that obviously is a calculated gamble by the Braves, and they're going to see if it pays off. But it does make it very difficult to have the kind of depth that you'd want to make a few of the changes that the Braves were trying to make over the course of this game. We'll get into all of that a little bit later, but as you just pointed out, I mean, it was another trying day for the Atlanta offense, which has somehow once again managed to slow to an absolute crawl at this point. Clearly, not having Austin Riley, not having Ronald Acuna Jr., not having Ozzie Albies. I mean, those are all things you can point to and say, okay, well, this is not the ideal lineup for the Braves. But the fact that you've gotten very little out of Jorge Soler in recent weeks. You've gotten very little out of Michael Harris since he's made his comeback as far as impacting the lineup. He's had some games here and there that have helped, but when you don't have those guys going and you don't have the services of some of these other players, we knew it was going to look different. It was going to play different. It was just quite frankly going to be different. And it's shown over the course of the year that this obviously ain't the 2023 version of this club, but this offense has got to figure out a way to do the things that it needs to do to manufacture runs. And maybe, Jake, a snapshot of that was in the way that they were trying to go about it in extra innings, because this is a Braves club that decided, even with a runner in scoring position and nobody out, the best play was to go ahead and bunt. And that has not been the Braves' MO over the past few years.
It hasn't, but I mean, we are at the point of the season. You got to figure out something that you can do to score runs in other ways. You're putting a lot of pressure on Ozuna, on Olsen, Murphy, d'Arnaud, those guys to deliver each and every time they come to the plate. And that's just, not realistic. I mean, you're missing 3 of your 4 best hitters right now in this lineup, and those guys are being elevated and counting on so much. You got to be able to find other ways to score. And I feel like you had opportunities earlier in this game. Look, Luke Williams gets on with a 1-out walk. Try to run him twice. He got on, and another time he got on to lead an inning, and he's just standing there at second base as Michael Harris pulls one to the second baseman for a double play. And it's just, you have to find other ways to try to manufacture runs. And I feel like I've been having this conversation for months now, but it's past due time for the offense to try to shake things up and score in different ways, whether it's the second inning or the 10th inning. I think those you have to utilize, especially when you talk about the bottom of the lineup here, especially, obviously when Ozuna's up there, Olsen's up there, you want to let those guys try to swing forward and give you that 2-run homer if you can. But when you're at the bottom of this lineup and guys are getting on, I just feel like it's the perfect opportunity, especially with some of those guys like Gio Urshela who can put the ball in play and are good at, working the bat. Try to find some other ways to put pressure on the pitcher and give yourself opportunities to score runs. If you can just push 1 run across here or there, it's better than what we saw most of the day on Sunday, which is you get a home run from Jared Kelenic, and there really wasn't anything else until late in the game, until that 9th inning, where you got a little help from the Toronto Blue Jays infield.
Yeah, no, you definitely did. And also, just being able to execute in a couple of spots certainly put some pressure on the Blue Jays infield as well, I think, especially the Eli White bunt. And we'll talk about that in a moment. I do want to go into what Chris Sale was able to do, because the only run that he had to work with was that Jared Kelenic home run way back in the second inning. But another terrific start from him. You mentioned the defense at times this weekend was a little bit spotty. Joe Jimenez had to deal with that, with what happened with a misplay at third base and then an untimely 2-run homer. And I think the Braves are going to be happy to see Spencer Horwitz leave town and not come back anytime soon, as he was just a mash unit for, in a good way, I guess, for the Toronto Blue Jays. The Braves, meanwhile, are a different kind of mash unit, and that's a different story for a different time. But Chris Sale doing his thing, Raisel Iglesias doing his thing. Again, I talked about this on social media earlier. I think the MVPs for the Braves are pretty clear. It's Chris Sale, Marcell Ozuna, and Raisel Iglesias. And these days, I'm not even sure what the order is for them based on how big some of the contributions have been for each of these guys for quite some time now.
Yeah, it's hard really to pick between those 3, but what Raisel Iglesias has done in the back end, this is now the 3rd or 4th time that he's come in and pitched 2 innings late in the game. Unfortunately, this time wasn't able to hold that ghost runner on, almost got out of it, had the strikeout, but then George Springer was able to sneak one through the infield. But either way, just the job he's done, really this whole season, but especially the second half, is just remarkable. But Chris Sale, 2 hits, 1 walk in this one. Did hit a couple of batters, which is a bit unusual, but still just another great performance out of him as he adds to his Cy Young resume out there. Again, it's between those 3 guys, just what they have given this Braves team. But Chris Sale, pretty much from beginning to end, I mean, we talk about it every time now that he pitches, he gives you a chance to win. And it's unfortunate he didn't get the win in this one, but we talk about with this Braves offense, you have to pretty much be perfect. And 6 innings of no runs. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that out of your starting pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, that's about as well as you can put it. As far as Chris Sale has been concerned, this has just been what he does every time he takes the ball, is get the Braves put the Braves in position to win a game by doing things exactly like what we saw on Sunday with 6 innings of shutout ball. Some little things that worked out in the 11th with Michael Harris already out on second base. Eli White's well-placed bunt out to the third base side of the mound, far enough away from the third baseman, past the pitcher with that kind of speed. That puts pressure on him. Then the E5 on Adam Duvall, a bad play by the Toronto third baseman. That allowed the Braves to tie the game up. You got to walk Matt Olson, I think, in that position if you're the Blue Jays. And then Eli White was able to score. Great speed. Again, the old baseball saying, speed never slumps. Maybe we should put that to the test for the final 3 weeks or so and just get on the move a little bit more with what you can. But Eli White definitely has great speed, able to score on a fielder's choice as Sean Murphy put the ball in play, and that gave the Braves this 4-3 win. Little things, Jake, I think, as we just talked about, and maybe just to put a pin in it or put a bow on it, this is what the Braves are going to have to do, is whatever it takes to score runs. And maybe it's going to look a little bit non-traditional in the way that it could look traditional in the baseball sense prior to this club becoming one of the best slugging teams in all of baseball.
Look, chicks dig the long ball, but I dig the long balls too. That's what I want to see, but it's not the case for this Braves team right now. And like we talked about earlier, you're just going to have to find other ways to score. And, good job by Eli White. Obviously, a lot of speed. Luke Williams, he has a hit and a walk in this game as well. So, one thing that both those guys can do is they can bring that speed element to this team that it's missing. And so you can utilize that whatever way you can to try to help get this offense going. Look, it's not going to spark a 6-7 run outing each and every night, but with this pitching staff, you don't need that. 3-4 runs most nights is going to get it done.
Yeah, and you hope that that's going to be enough the way this pitching staff has pitched. But as we'll talk about, the margin for error is awfully thin for this Braves pitching staff, but they continue to do the job pretty much day in and day out. All the things that 2024 Braves have done, Jake, this kind of the final note here before we transition on into the second segment, but leading Major League Baseball in extra inning wins feels like the most non-2024 Brave stat I can throw at you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild year. That is one that I would have never predicted, but they played in a lot of close games because the pitching has been as good as it has and the offense has been as bad as it has. They've been in a lot of ball games, led to a lot of extra innings. Fortunately, they've come out on top of a lot of those.
Yeah, you'll certainly take it. Things like what Raisel Iglesias has been doing, especially lately, big reasons why the Braves are able to pick up those kinds of wins. 4-3, the final over Toronto on Sunday to take 2 out of 3 in the series. When we come back, we'll talk more about the performance of Chris Sale, some of the other big plays in this game that led to a Braves win. The season for Jared Kelenic, which saw him hit a home run that gives him a career high for his young career. We'll talk a little bit about what he's been doing and what he could mean to the Braves over the next 3 or so weeks or more after that. And, of course, we'll get you set up for the Braves' quick encounter with the Cincinnati Reds, which will be happening on Monday. All of that coming your way as the Braves postcast continues. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and we have something a little bit different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game Sunday afternoon and out of market. Any of those and all of those games will be available to you. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook today. Jake, let's look at the line score and box score of this game, one that saw the Braves pick up a win in 11 innings. Atlanta now 78-65 on the season. 4 runs, 8 hits, 1 error for the Braves, who left 9 men on base in this game. Toronto Blue Jays now 68-76. Jays with 3 runs, 8 hits, 2 errors, one of them very costly in extra innings. They left 13 men on base in this game. The winning pitcher in this one, Raisel Iglesias, he is now 5-1. Losing pitcher for the Blue Jays is Zach Pop, who drops to 1-4 on the year. And let's talk a little bit about what Chris Sale had going on in this one, because he was terrific again. 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, couple of hit batsmen, but 7 strikeouts. Still, it just continues to amaze the consistency in which Chris Sale has done this and the brilliance in which he has pitched pretty much all this season. I mean, you take out really one awful start against the Oakland Athletics of all teams, and this is about as close to a picture-perfect season first year in Atlanta as you could possibly draw up for Chris Sale with what he's been able to do, and more importantly, Jake, how he's been able to do it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's also amazing that I think if you put the Oakland A's and Chicago White Sox on the Braves schedule, they might not win a game with some of the encounters they've had with those two teams. But Chris Sale, again, it's impressive. And this one, look, it wasn't the dominant stuff. Only 10 whiffs in this game for Chris Sale. So the Blue Jays did a good job of putting the ball in play, but nothing hit particularly hard. And just goes to show you, the stuff that he has to be able to to get it done. 113 pitches, though. They did make him work a little bit to kind of battle through this one, but it's just the stuff is so good. That slider is such a weapon for him on righties. He can throw it in under the bat, or he can dot it on the outside like you saw him do to paint a corner for a strikeout today, and see him do a lot of times. And it's just fun to watch him pitch. I've been talking a lot here lately, like when you watch this Braves team, what do you look forward to seeing right now? Because it's really not much you could say on the offensive side of things, but certainly when Chris Sale takes the mound, it is the one guy as a Braves fan that you can't watch or you can't not watch, because it's just so fun to see him pitch and the way that he's able to get it done, and using that fastball slider, a couple of good changeups on the day as well. Actually threw 20 changeups. That's more than I think we usually see him throw. So mixing that in as well with all those righties at the plate against them for the Blue Jays. So it's just been unbelievable watching him work and seeing when maybe he doesn't even have that most dominant stuff, being able to get through 6 scoreless innings. And what I love about Chris Sale, we talk about it a lot, it was 90, 91, 92 early in the outing. And then, as he gets in those big situations, all of a sudden it's 95, 96, 97 when he needs it. So love to see that from Chris Sale, knowing that moment gets a little bit bigger and he's got to step up to make those big pitches. And more often than not, he does.
Yeah, he's certainly been doing it for the Braves time and time again. That 113 pitches, a regular season high for Chris Sale, or a season high for Chris Sale, I should say, in an Atlanta Braves uniform. He has crossed the 100 pitch mark plenty, but if you go back and look, since the month of August, he has had 3 of his highest pitch counts of the season. All 3 of them have occurred. So as you've seen, as we've gone along in the season, hopefully that extra rest has manifested in giving Chris Sale a little bit more than he was given, with right around 100 pitches for a lot of the season. And now the Braves are pretty much, and I'm sure Chris Sale is ready to empty the tank, because that's what all the preparation was for. That's what those extra days of rest were supposed to help out with. Sale now leads Major League Baseball with a 2.38 ERA, his 16 wins. Didn't get one on Sunday, but pitched well enough, again, to pick up a win. I think at this point, Jake, if some things had gone well, this would be a 20-game winner easily with what Chris Sale has been able to do. That's just not up for debate. 213 strikeouts. That's a Triple Crown season in Major League Baseball, not just the National League, but Major League Baseball, and another step on Sunday towards his first career Cy Young, which I think is starting to become, in the words of Thanos, inevitable.
Yeah, maybe 3, possibly 4 more starts, depending how the Braves want to do things the rest of the way, how they want to line up their rotation. But it's getting closer and closer to that. Unless he faces the A's again, I think he has a really good chance of closing this thing out and hopefully getting it done. I would love to see that for him. I know he's talking about all the team, what the team can do and what they're trying to accomplish, but certainly that would be a great one for Chris Sale, something that's eluded him and what could potentially be a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been putting in the work to make it a Hall of Fame career, and we'll see when he's done what it might look like. But it's also worth pointing out that Chris Sale moved into some Hall of Fame company, passed a couple of Hall of Famers on Sunday with his 7 strikeouts. He moved into the top 50 strikeout pitchers of all time, passing both Sandy Koufax and Dennis Eckersley, also Kevin Brown, who was a pretty good pitcher in his own right, to move into 49th place all time. Just another feather in the cap, Chris, or Zach, of Jake. I'm going to get all these names right eventually when I stop looking at 15 different things at once. But Jake, just another feather in the cap for Chris Sale and what has been a masterful season and what has gotten his career back on the Hall of Fame trajectory that it was on for so long before years of injuries kind of derailed that and made you kind of wonder, would he be able to get back to that level?
Yeah, it certainly did. I know, obviously early on you could see him on that track, and then with all the injuries, you were hoping that wasn't going to ruin that opportunity for him. And maybe it still does. Obviously, I think he has some more work to do, and hopefully he gets it done in a Braves uniform. Obviously, the Braves signing him up for next season. But we talked about it last time. No matter what you say and whether he gets in or not, I think he will easily go down as one of the better strikeout pitchers this game has ever seen.
Yeah, most definitely. I was going through trying to find feverishly the last time that Chris Sale had thrown so many pitches in a game as he did today. It was May of 2018, the last time that he had a pitch count that exceeded his pitch count from Sunday. So something else he's been able to do for the first time in a while. I want to talk about Jared Kelenic for a minute here. Home run in the second inning, only run for the Braves until they were able to get things going late, push it into extras, and eventually win it. 15th of the season, a career high for him. I know it's been far from a breakout season. There have been peaks and there have been valleys. But, Jake, how do you size up Jared Kelenic's first year in Atlanta with what could be 3 rather important weeks and then maybe some playoff opportunities ahead of him in his first year for the Braves?
Yeah, it's been an up and down season, like you said. I thought he got out to a pretty good start. He was playing that platoon role kind of every day, and then just kind of cooled off after that. And then when Acuna went down, he had a great month in that leadoff spot for the Atlanta Braves when they really needed it. But then it's been a struggle for him since then, after that one really hot month that he had. So kind of tough to evaluate it. I'd say it's kind of, another season that leaves you kind of hoping for a little bit more from Jared Kelenic rather than answering or seeing some of that potential that you wanted to see from him. I thought he's played a great left field as well. He's very good out there defensively. He's had to cover center field a lot this year with Michael Harris out. And who knows what that may have played into it all. So again, it wasn't quite the breakout season, like you said, that I was hoping for Jared Kelenic, but he's shown signs here or there, I think, to still give you some hope going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And you just want to see those signs, and you want to see the opportunity for him to evolve a little bit as a player. And I think there's been a little bit of that mixed in, but I think comes a point for young players where some of that adversity begins to really take root and teach you some lessons that maybe the immediate success that he's been very much looking for in his young career that hasn't come easy. It might make it just one of those things that allows him to, I think, grow into it eventually and be better for the struggle. And we'll see if he's able to put all that stuff together for the Braves over the course of his time here in Atlanta. When we come back, we'll talk some about what's coming up for the Braves. Of course, we'll take a look at the wild card. And unfortunately, we got to have another injury discussion as the Braves are without the backup to their already ailing second baseman who's on the IL. And then they lost the guy that was supposed to be filling in. We'll talk more about that and what the Braves' plans are at that position and much more as the Braves postcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only in the U.S. Well, let's put a bow on Sunday and, of course, take a look ahead to what is going to be going on for the Braves on Monday as they welcome the Cincinnati Reds to town for a makeup game. First, though, the wild card, I think we got to take a little bit of a peek at that. Braves and Mets once again tied for that third wild card spots. The Diamondbacks, meanwhile, fading back into the pack, and now it seems like the final two spots in the wild card race might be a little bit more in play than it seemed even a week ago, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a four-team race at this point. I think all four teams are pretty much in the same spot. I know the Padres and Diamondbacks are kind of there at the top, but they're in two games of those teams now. So you could say all three of those wild card spots are really up for grabs. I know Braves fans been paying a lot of attention to the Mets and their hot streak. They finally lost a game. Wasn't sure they ever would again. I know a lot of Braves fans are paying attention to that, but really you might want to look at the two teams that are ahead of them to see if they fall back and give you a chance as well.
Yeah, and if you look at what the Braves and Mets have coming up, penultimate series of the season will be the final showdown for them head-to-head. 5-5 on the year, I believe, is the head-to-head record between these two clubs. So that three-game series, I mean, that could obviously make a dent in whatever you're doing with this third or even the second wild card spot, but also the tiebreaker rules, which the Braves and Mets are no strangers to based on their 2022 encounter. That also could play pretty big for these two teams. The Diamondbacks, who were in action on Sunday night as well, game and a half in front of the Braves in the wild card. Braves and the Mets, who are tied in that third spot. Padres, as Jake mentioned, just 2 games up. So it could be pretty interesting to see what happens as the Padres have also lost a couple games in a row, just 5-5 in their last 10. Same for the Braves. Diamondbacks, as of the action of Saturday, were 4-6 in their last 10. Mets, meanwhile, 9-1. So they have really been able to dial it in at a time that they need to push themselves into the picture and push not only the Braves, but maybe a couple other teams in this wild card race. So buckle in. Final 19 games could get pretty interesting in that wild card. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, we got to talk about an injury because what would a Braves postcast or really just a week in Braves baseball be without talking about another injury? Whit Merrifield, a broken foot, could be back in a week, though. I was down there a couple of days ago to hear from Whit Merrifield about this. I saw him come in. He had a walking boot on. I immediately thought, well, that's not great. And in fact, it wasn't. He said, yep, my foot's broken. And then the prognosis was 6 to 8 weeks. And then all of a sudden the prognosis became maybe I'll be back in a week or so, because he saw a foot specialist that said, based on the bone that he's broken, if they can get the swelling to go down and the soft tissue around it, he could theoretically play on this broken foot. It's going to be up to him to handle his pain tolerance. Jake, I don't know if that's good fortune. I don't know if it's medium fortune. I don't know what to call this, but it does tell me, and I already knew this because I talked to him earlier after the finger injury. Whit Merrifield is one tough SOB, and if he wants to get out there and play, he's going to try to go out there and play, and that's the reason why the Braves are leaving the door open to perhaps have him back and not place him on the injured list for 15 days.
Yeah, I hate to laugh at the misfortune here, but it's just like Whit Merrifield is feeling the curse of this 2024 team. I mean, the guy comes over, he hurts a finger, he's getting hit in the head, he's breaking a foot, and we're at a point now where this 2024 team is. Do we have players who can play on a broken foot? I mean, that's just where this team is this year, and it's so unfortunate for Whit because he was getting a chance to play every day and seemed to be relishing in that role. I mean, he was hitting at the top of the lineup a lot for the Braves, playing good defense too. So it's just really, really unfortunate. I mean, that was a good veteran guy that you had in your outfield. People were talking, when Ozzie comes back, how do you keep him in the lineup? Do you play him in the outfield, move him to third? I mean, he had been that kind of spark for this Braves team, but it's just 2024 season, Grant. I don't know what else that you can say or there is to say about it. It's just all the injuries. Like I said, our backups are getting hurt multiple times now. It's just so frustrating because, again, I liked Whit and I like the veteran leadership and experience he brought to this team, and hopefully he can be back. Again, I just got to question what level can you play at on a broken foot like that. You're going to be in any type of pain right now. But again, like you said, he's a very tough guy. I know he wants to get out there and play if he can and try to help this Braves team.
Yeah, and I know that the Braves appreciate that grit as well. I guess it's the 10-day injured list for a position player. They didn't even want to, chance that, because as you look at where the Braves depth chart is at this point, when they had to do all their mixing and matching and pinch hitting and pinch running and everything that went on in this 11-inning game, that, it kind of had all the old school National League feel to it in a lot of ways. But the Braves had really run out of traditional infielders, and all of a sudden, a guy that started his career as an infielder in the minors, in Eli White, had to come in and play second base. We're talking to Brian Snitker earlier this week. He said Ramon Laureano has been taking some ground balls on the infield as well. I mean, it has gotten to that point, and I don't know that we want to see all of these scenarios play out, but one of them happened on Sunday when Luke Williams was out of that game, and you took your shot at trying to win it with that pinch hitter. And I think Brian Snitker's kind of gotten to this point, and I don't blame him for this. We're just going to figure it out as we go, because there may not be a what you would call as a plan A or the best plan for us. We just got to figure out how to make it happen no matter what it looks like. Braves and Reds, meanwhile, have got to play a makeup game on Monday. Cincinnati won the other two back in July. They're going to meet again in Cincinnati next week, so they'll be seeing quite a bit of the Reds coming up. Monday is Charlie Morton against Nick Martinez. Morton's 8-7, a 4.24 ERA. Martinez 7-6 with a 3.67. Clearly, as Charlie Morton has gone along this season, it's kind of just been about, I think, just trying to grit his way through at least 5 innings and keep the club in the game. He's done a pretty good job of that here lately, Jake, and the Braves would take that again on Monday. But as we've talked about so many times, will the run support be there? That seems to be the question we have to ask ourselves on a daily basis.
Yeah, and especially when your fifth starter's going to the mound, and we've talked about it. I mean, that's what Charlie Morton has been here lately. I know Schwellenbach struggled on Saturday, but Charlie Morton's been your fifth best starter for the second half of this season. So typically you're going to want your offense to give him some support, but Morton's pitched better than that. I think on most teams, he probably is a good number 4, at times 3 starter. But if he can give you, like you said, 5+ innings, 2 earned or less, like he did in his last outing, I mean, you'll take that from Charlie Morton, but you just got to hope that your offense can give you something, because you use Dylan Lee, you use Pierce Johnson, although it was just 1 pitch. You use Joe Jimenez. He had to throw a lot of pitches. Iglesias threw 2 innings. So you'd really like to try to avoid those guys if you can. And the only way to do that is if Morton can go deep and if the offense can give you a bunch of runs. And we'll see if either of those things can happen on Monday, but certainly the Braves could use it.
Yeah, will be interesting to see. Charlie could use some runs. Not a lot of Braves have seen Nick Martinez, but a couple who have, Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna, they have had some very good fortune against him. Each of them have homered twice off Martinez. Olson hitting 308 with a 1,200 OPS against him in 13 career at-bats. Ozuna, meanwhile, 4 for 8 with those 2 home runs, has done some pretty good work against Martinez. And it doesn't really, it's a pretty obvious statement those are the names of the guys who need to come through with some big hits and some big power here if the Braves really want to get this lineup rolling.
Yeah, those are your two guys. Talked about it earlier in the podcast with all of the guys that you're missing right now. Those are really the two guys you look at batting 3 and 4 in your lineup, that if you're going to put up a big number, if you're going to have a big game offensively, it's probably because either Ozuna, Olsen, or both have done some damage, whether it be home run, extra base hits, driving in runs. Those are your two guys that, again, a lot of pressure on them right now to come through in those situations that they have whenever they get them.
Yeah, Marcel going through a bit of a homerless streak, believe his longest one of the season now, up to 18 games. It would be nice to break that streak in support of Charlie Morton. It's Morton against Martinez. Braves and Reds are happening on Monday at 6:40 at Truist Park as they make up that previously rescheduled game. And the Braves wrap up a homestand against 3 teams that they very much need to beat up on. Can they finish it on a high note against Cincinnati on Monday? That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube and give us those likes, comments, and share the show with a friend. Subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, Atlanta able to take 2 out of 3 from the Toronto Blue Jays with a walk-off win. Dramatic fashion on Sunday. They'll look to carry that momentum on to Monday. We'll be back with you after that game. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. Until next time, so long, everyone.